Hey guys, here's Jay and I'm again with a new C# tutorial for beginners, and in this one I will show you how to use lists. Again, we start with our sample project in which we created some users that we can log in using a login manager class, and let's add a third user. And finally I want to add these users to a list, because a list is a data type to store other data in a sequential way, and then you could loop over this list and in my example call the login method for each entry of this list. Okay, one possibility to create a list is using the type ArrayList. So type in ArrayList like that, but as you can see the data type is not known. But what you can do is you can click on Show Potential Fixes, and then you can select using System Collections. This is the namespace in which this class ArrayList is located. So when you include it by using System Collections, the class is known and you can create an instance of an ArrayList by using the new keyword. Alright, now we have an instance of an ArrayList and we are able to add items to it. This can be done by using the add method that is appending an item to the list. But as you can see here, the type of this item is object. But what does object mean? An object is the ultimate base class of all classes of the .NET framework. And this means we can store every data type in this array list. So you could add numbers, strings, or the user instances that we created. And you can mix these data types. This means this list now contains a number, a user, and a string. Now you could say, hey, that's cool, I don't have to care for the data type. But there's a problem. Let me show you what could happen when I want to work with a special item of this list. I retrieve an item now at a certain index, for example, the second one, the index is 1, and I assume that this is an integer. But to assign it, for example, to this int number, I have to cast it. So write int in round brackets, and then I can assign it to this int variable. But we know that this is not an int, it is a user instance. But our program compiles correctly because the compiler doesn't care for the data type in this array list. And look at this, what happens when we start the program. We get a system invalid cast exception. This means the program is crashing. What you could do is to use exception handling. We will come to this in a later tutorial, but I have a better solution. Avoid using the array list. So I will remove this here, also the namespace, and we are going to use a different list from the namespace System.Collections.Generic. This list is just called list, very simple, and then you have to define the data type of the items that will be stored in this list. This has to be done by using this angle brackets. And in the first example, I will store numbers, integers. But before I can use it, I have to include the namespace. So select here using System.Collections.Generic. Okay, as we did for the array list, we create an instance of this list by using the new keyword. And again, we have to define the data type. Now you can use the add method as before to append items to the list, but these items have to be of type integer. If you try to add an item of a different data type, for example, a string, the program just won't compile. So you get an error, but not at runtime. You get it at compile time, and also the IDE tells you that this is not possible. So what you can see here is called type safety, and I highly recommend to make use of it and not to use the data type object. Okay, but I don't want to store integers, I want to store users, so I change the data type of this list to user, and then I add the user instances that we created to the list by using the add method. Alright, so let's work a little bit with this list, for example, get a user at a certain index. But before I do this, I will rename this list from numbers to users. Just select rename and type in the new name here in Visual Studio. And this is a refactoring method so that each appearance of this list will be renamed. And then I use the square brackets. This is an operator to get a user at a certain index. For example, the first one. And you don't have to cast this anymore because it is defined that our list is storing users and not any other type. What you can also do is to remove users, for example by using the remove method. With this method you are able to remove a particular item, and by using the remove add method you can remove an item at a certain index. The last method that I want to show is the insert method. We know already that add is going to append an item, but insert will insert an item into the list at a certain index. In this example, I insert the user2 at index 1, so it will be the second item in the list. Okay, let's remove these insert and remove examples because I wanted to create a list of users and I want to loop over this list to call the login method of the login manager for each item of the list. So I will use a foreach loop. We didn't talk about this, but I will come back to this in a later tutorial to iterate over these users. Oh, see, I have to rename this user here because we get a naming conflict. So I rename the first user to user1, and the user inside of our foreach loop can now be called user, and I can use this now as a parameter of the login method that I call for each user in the list. But I will go more into detail about this in the next tutorial, which will be about loops. So guys, I really hope you liked this tutorial and it was understandable for you. If you have any questions, add these to the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and it would be great if you support me on my Patreon. This would really help this channel grow. Thanks for watching guys, thanks for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.